despite their second Super Bowl appearance in Kyle Shanahan's tenure with San Francisco, they're still chasing that 6th championship. So going into this offseason, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan brought in several players in hopes of putting them over the edge. But even though competition usually breeds a better roster, it also means familiar faces must move on. So in today's video, we'll dive into 5 49ers teetering on the edge. Will they keep their jobs, secure playing time, or find themselves replaced by fresh talent? Starting out with probably the most controversial player on my list, Jauan Jennings. I'm not out here saying Jauan Jennings is outright going to lose his job, but it does look like he might see a significant dip in his playing time, especially with Brandon Aiyuk returning to Levi's. This leaves Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing competing for that slot job. Initially, the player most likely to eat into Jauan Jennings' playing time is Ricky Pearsall, San Francisco's first-round pick. Pearsall, like Jennings, across his college time showed that he was a willing blocker, but unlike Jennings, he has the breakaway speed that can score from anywhere on the field. He ran his 40-yard dash in a blistering 4.41, and so far with San Francisco, he looks like a first-round talent. One of my favorite things about his game is his ability to accelerate and decelerate on a dime, and this helps him create tons of separation, especially with the routes Kyle Shanahan loves to run, like his whip routes. On top of that, Pearsall catches almost everything that comes his direction, including passes over the middle. And while we still have to wait to see pads come on, during his time in college, his quarterbacks really did him no favors and led him into dangerous zones where he was absolutely tattooed, but he rarely dropped any balls thrown his direction. Jennings also has to compete with Jacob Cowing, San Francisco's 4th-round selection out of Arizona, and so far he's already developed a nice chemistry with Brock Purdy. In a similar way you see Purdy's connection with Aiyuk, how he throws to a set spot and he knows Ayuk's going to be there, already it appears he's developing that connection with Cowing, and Cowing is proving him right. I really do believe Cowing is going to be a successful wide receiver in a similar way Tank Dell was with the Texans. So while Jauan Jennings might not outright lose his job, I do think he's going to see himself in a more specialized role with San Francisco. Staying on the offensive side of the ball, but moving over to the tight end position, Cameron Latu might be cut this year. This might be a shock to some, as Latu was selected in the 3rd round last year for San Francisco, and he was billed as the perfect tight end 2 for George Kittle. But things haven't panned out that way. From what we saw out of Latu from his first year, we saw a tight end that was really struggling to learn Kyle Shanahan's offense and also had several drops. But before the start of the season last year, San Francisco put Latu on IR with a knee injury that he's still coming back from, and while it's projected he'll be back for training camp, there's still other tight ends he has to compete with. First of all being Brayden Willis, who I think is in the conversation for San Francisco's 2nd best tight end. He looks noticeably stronger from his first year in the league, as well as being better at running routes. You also have the pass-catching threat Logan Thomas coming in from the Washington Commanders. Last year for the Commanders, he had nearly 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, so he instantly is one of the better tight ends San Francisco has had behind Kittle. They also brought in Eric Sauber, who's an absolute run grader. San Francisco didn't stop there though. They also picked up an undrafted free agent in Mason Pline. Pline comes out of Furman, being a former college basketball player. He comes in at 6'6" and he does an excellent job of tracking the ball in the air. His catch radius is just insane, and he has some of the softest hands of any tight end out of this draft class. Brian Fleury, San Francisco's tight end coach, is also extremely intrigued by him, saying there's tons of athleticism there. So heading into this training camp, it really does seem like Latu is on the outside looking in, and based on his play last year, it's hard to see him making a noticeable jump when he's taken off an entire season to come back from an injury. So heading into this year, I really don't see how he makes the team, unless maybe he's on another IR designation. Coming in at number 3, moving over to the defensive side of the ball, Ambry Thomas is poised to see a significant decrease in his playing time. Last year, Thomas found himself filling into that cornerback 2 role when San Francisco switched their nickelback defense, with Lenore sliding inside. But here's the thing, while he did improve his play last year, teams were still targeting him, and he was obviously a weak spot for San Francisco. So unsurprisingly, surprisingly, Lynch kind of went hard on the position, picking up Isaac Yiadom, Rock Ya-Sin, and Renardo Green out of Florida State. Probably the biggest surprise here has to be the play of Yiadom. Right now, he's arguably San Francisco's second best corner. He's coming off a year in which he had 14 passes defended and 1 interception. When quarterbacks did target Yiadom, it proved to be a bad choice as they completed only 48.9% of their passes. And according to PFF, he's the second best corner on San Francisco's roster, behind only Charvarius Ward with a grade of 81.1. What's really impressive to me though, it looks like he's finally put everything together. So far against guys like Deebo Samuel and Ricky Pearsall for instance, he's had no issues, and he's even broken up several passes. And while Yiadom became known for his press man technique last year, what really stands out this year is his ability in zone coverage. Specifically, his ability to bait quarterbacks into throwing his direction. But Yiadom wasn't the only impressive addition this offseason. Renardo Green has also done an excellent job in San Francisco's offseason program. He shut down Deebo Samuel as well as Ricky Pearsall. And while Green has primarily been playing in that nickelback role, I do think he can transfer over to the outside role as he did that in college. But that's not the only competition Thomas faces. Darrell Luter Jr. also looks to be coming into his own during his second year. He's solid in press man coverage and he doesn't panic when the ball's in the air. He makes plays on it rather than drawing costly penalties. So even though Thomas started last year, right now I see him competing alongside Womack, Rock Ya-Sin, and Chase Lucas for a roster spot. Coming in at number 4, Danny Gray, selected in the 2020 NFL Draft in the 3rd round, really needs to prove he can do something for San Francisco, because if not, he may find himself cut before the season even starts. Initially, the plan for Danny Gray was to utilize his speed to overcome some of his other weaknesses. He ran his 40-yard dash in 4.33, but unlike a guy like Cowing, you don't necessarily always see that speed translate, as Danny Gray might have a little bit more track speed than football speed. He really struggles getting in and out of his breaks as well as catching with his hands. So unless Gray is able to improve substantially and maybe even grab one of those return duties, it's really hard to see how San Francisco keeps him over a guy like Bell, Chris Conley, or even the rookie Jacob Cowing. The final player who I think is going to see a significant decrease in their playing time is Spencer Burford. While Burford has all the ability in the world to be a successful lineman for San Francisco, he's really struggled to have consistency with San Francisco. And according to Chris Forster, that's the biggest reason why they went with a guy like Jon Feliciano over him. And it really didn't help Burford's case in the Super Bowl that he just blew his assignment on a play that could have won them the game. I'm not saying this entire game goes on Burford's shoulders, but in the past, we have seen Kyle Shanahan move off players that he may have thought lost him the game, like Tart or Jimmy G. And when you look at their actions, San Francisco selected an offensive lineman to replace Spencer Burford in the 3rd round in Dominic Pooney. So far, he's working in at that right guard spot, and my bet is he starts sooner rather than later. Ultimately, these are just 5 players who have been with the team that could either see a significant decrease in their playing time, lose their job, or be cut from the team outright. Or at least I think so, and I want to hear your top 5 players heading into this training camp that may either see a significant decrease in their playing time, lose their job, or be cut. It would also mean a ton to me if you liked and subscribed, and as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.